A few weeks ago, we interviewed filmmaker James Lantz about his podcast concerning the multiple suicides of trans youth in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. In a side conversation, he also told us about a drag queen story hour in Lancaster that had to be canceled because of bomb threats. He hooked us up with the hostess of the drag story hour, Amie Vanité, and we're going to talk to her tonight. But first, let's watch this.
Welcome and bienvenue, welcome. Friend, étranger, stranger. Plus, sous je suis enchanté. Happy to see you, live to stay.
Welcome to Drag Queen Story Hour with Miss Amie. I'm here again. Stonewall, a building, an uprising. Two stable houses, side by side. For more than 100 years, we witnessed history. Then came a night when we became part of history. I'd like to build the world a home and furnish it with love. Grow apple trees and honey bees and snow white turtle dove. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. And I'd like to hold it in my arms and keep it company. I'd like to see the world for once all standing hand in hand, and hear them echo through the hills for peace throughout the land. That's the song I hear. Let the world sing today, oh yeah.
Wow, why am I suddenly wanting a bottle of Coca-Cola? I'm not sure. But Amie, come on in.
Hello.
Oh, that song I remember so well, and it did start off as a commercial for Coca-Cola.
Yes.
But I love the song anyway. So, Amie, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Before we get started about the mess that happened for your Drag Queen Story Hour, tell us a little about you. When did you start doing drag and why?
I started doing drag just after high school. I was a musical theater geek like my whole life, and I just happened to kind of fall into it when we were playing around with some makeup and doing some things, and I was like, oh my goodness, I look really, really good. And then later on through high school, realized people did this like for a living. So I figured, what the heck, I'll add it into my little acting umbrella. And I started doing it for the love of theater and the love of entertaining people. And it's been over 20 years now.
Tell us about some of your first gigs.
Some of my first gigs were in the tiniest little places that were like hours away. So it was a lot of travel time with friends and rehearsing your music while you're in the car. My actual first show, well, Amy's first public appearance happened in high school during our senior talent show, which was pretty hysterical. Some of the football players came out in like half drag, and we all did a chorus line like together, and it was adorable. But my first real gig in like an establishment happened by accident. I showed up with friends to someone's birthday party, and entertainers didn't show up, and they're like, well, you're ready to go. Can you do something? And I was like, yep. So I did.
What did you do?
I did Bring on the Men from Jekyll and Hyde.
Wow. You were prepared.
I was.
So where did it go from there? When did you start doing it regularly, and where?
Regularly, probably, let's see, 2010, 2009, I guess, 2008. Yeah, 2008. I was just doing things here and there, having some little cameo parts in local like ballet productions and other theater productions if they needed somebody who was pretty in a dress. that wasn't a lady. And we, at that point here in Berks County, only had one LGBT establishment left at that point. It was called the Red Star. So I was regularly performing there starting in 08. After I'd performed at Reading Pride's first official Pride Festival in 07. And by 2010, I was Miss Red Star. That was my first title, my first real title. I had some other silly titles before then, but yeah.
Where is Lancaster or Reading in Pennsylvania? Give us a
We're
geographical lesson.
like kind of south central. Lancaster's about a half an hour south from where I am in the Reading area.
So it's not really a popular or population of a lot of blue voting people.
Surprisingly, we are. Where I live in West Reading, we're quite blue. Same with like in the city itself. And Lancaster City is incredibly blue. So for what was going on, we'd never expected anything like what happened to happen.
When did you start doing your drag queen story hour?
I started doing story hour here. I was Pennsylvania's first official chapter to start up. There were some other people who were kind of doing it freelance, but they weren't under the like corporate headquarter umbrella sort of thing. So I started that in 2018 after I had like heard some hubbub of it like moving over this way. Because the program started in 2015, I believe, in San Francisco. So it finally made its way over here. And then I caught some wind and I was like, wait a minute, I could do this. So I reached out to some of my theater people. We have a very large network of people we know to see if somebody knew somebody in the library system. And a friend of mine was like, hey, I just have this librarian friend who is wondering how we do story hour around here. And the librarian had reached out to Reading Pride, and Reading Pride recommended me. And then my friend got the two of us hooked up, and she was like, oh my God, it's you. And I was like, hi, it's me. And had a couple of meetings, planned out a program. And then she was like, it's your baby. Have fun. Bye.
So how frequently were you doing it back then?
Usually when I first started, the first official program was at Reading Pride that year in 2018. Then I did it at Lehigh Valley Pride, and I started doing like smaller little gigs. We have kind of like in West Reading, we have like a main strip that's a couple of blocks with like different street festivals throughout the year. So I'm friends with a lot of people who work. I've worked a lot of different places, helping out, shop sitting and this and that. And just kind of reached out to my friends, and I was like, hey, like I'm starting this program. Would you mind if I like, popped over to your shop, like, at some point throughout the day and like did a little, song and, read a book or two, and then like kind of moved around up and down the avenue for those kind of things. And then by 2019, I started doing things in the libraries, and that's when the people started getting angry.
So you've been doing this for over 5 years. 6 years. 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Your math is better than mine. Very good. 6 years. How
I can only count to 8 though, because I'm a dancer.
How do you select your books that you read?
I got most of my initial suggestions from librarians who, knew what kind of books would be appropriate. And then the longer I've been doing it, being in the network, authors who write books have reached out to me and just asked if I would read them, and they'd send me a copy. And I've been at places performing, and someone comes up to me and I wrote a book. Will you read it? And I was like, yes. And I worked pretty closely with Sunny Dean. She's a fantastic author. Two of my favorite books that I usually read at every program. One is The Yellow Square of Stonewall, which is kind of a dumbed down version of like the riots, based around like blue circles and pink triangles, and yellow square doesn't fit in, but then find Stonewall where everyone is a different shape and size and color. and she found her home. The other one that Sunny Dean wrote that I love is One Equals Many. And that book is just so simple but so poignant. I just feel the need to read it like at every story hour that I do.
All right. You had a bomb threat recently at one of your readings, and we're going to talk about that right
Yes.
after this break. We'll be
Okay.
right back.
This is Russell, producer and co-host of Amber Live, reminding you that it is your support that keeps us going. You can make a donation through this podcast by using our Venmo at RJDPro or by visiting us at amberlive.tv and clicking on the Support Amber Live button. And now, back to this incredible interview.
All right, we're back with Amie Vanité, and we're talking about Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and her drag queen story hour. All right, in our first segment, you talked about you've been doing this since 2018, and then you moved into the libraries in 2019, and that's when there was starting to be some rumblings. Tell us about that.
So it didn't materialize that quickly. It took a few months. My first library gig was at Wyomissing's public library, beautiful little space. And then there was a big news article that a reporter had done, like interviewed me beforehand, and then came to the event to, write more about what was, happening with the photographer, took pictures. And they published in that article my next two scheduled ones, which were going to be in Sinking Spring and in Exeter. So they started showing up. It was the day the article came out was the day before I was going to be at Sinking Spring. So we got there. The library director said that there were some people there. They had been getting complaints and whatever, and they were there to pray and like not be disruptive, but it's a public space, so they allowed them to be there. They weren't terrible. And then after that, my next one in Exeter, we had quite the rumbling. There was a lot of people very angry and upset, yelling things and bullhorns and MAGA hats and crusade flags and bagpipes. And I was all very confused with what was happening. I got there before anything really materialized. But it's kind of this one main group that tends to follow me around. They're not violent people. They don't condone any sort of violence at all. They're just very uber religious, and it's all men, which is also confusing. And they're just, at this point, they're just really annoying, like noise that we have to kind of tune out as best we can.
So did this follow you? That was in 2019.
Yes.
Did it continue until the most recent one?
Yes. They did show up. The last time I really had to deal with them, I was doing a Tea Party event in Hanover, which is about an hour or so from Lancaster, so further south. And they showed up to this tea party. There had been like flyers put out, like advertising, where I was going to be, used my name, didn't use a picture of me at all, but like used my name. And they've also published some lovely literature on their website about me. The thing that disturbed me most about this poster was there was a child, like not a real child, more of like a cartoon, sort of, not even cartoon, but an artist rendering of a child that had a like gun target bullseye over the kid's face. And I was like, this is a little absurd. I don't know if it actually came from those people, because there was another group that was there as well. But they were there for that. This is the last time I really had to deal with any of that nonsense. It doesn't seem, because these people do not show up if I'm in like some sort of like non-community space or at like Pride. they never show up to Pride events. Some, I've seen a couple people here and there at a Pride festival, but they mostly like to show up at like smaller places where they seem like they're the ones in numbers. But I have, you know, protocol to follow from headquarters. So if I ever hear of something like this materializing, I immediately jump on my bandwagon of getting a hold of the people who show up to make a wall of love. So the kids don't need to see or hear any of this nonsense, and they can get into the space safely. Not, well, yeah, safely, but more so like not jarred by why there's people angry outside when they're going to have a fun time.
Tell us about the bomb threat, the most recent one that was in the news.
So we had heard that there was some suspicion. We knew people were going to come and be angry, and then we heard some other things that we weren't really sure. We just kind of brushed it off and like, this seems a little extra. I don't think this is going to happen. But even so, took it seriously enough that we had extra security measures in place. I wasn't even going to show up in drag. I took all of my things to the library the night before and woke up early to get ready, like behind the scenes in the library. So I would just appear in the room when the program was starting and I was ready to go. So I arrived at 9:00 and the police were doing a planned, just last minute double check just in case. And a dog alerted to a package and they evacuated the library. And then we were trying to get information and they said that we weren't even going to be allowed back into the library until after 1 p.m., which is when the program was going to start. And then all these other little things kept coming through. So by, I think it was 10:30, it was before 11 o'clock. We decided for everyone's safety, we're just going to cancel it and, wait around to find out what happened. And then these other threats came in later, around noon or so, and specifically named like where we were all like congregating in the city, which also really suspicious. Like, how do you all know that we're here right now? But turned out that they were all, hope. It was a big giant hoax. Nothing was real. And they released information a couple of days after the fact that the package that had initially been alerted to was coloring books the library had ordered from the USDA for an Earth Day event. So long story short, we got canceled because of coloring books.
But the original threat was there.
Yes, the original threat was at the library. That you said that they had sent the package and then they had planted other devices throughout neighboring buildings, because it's kind of a big giant complex. I don't think you can get from one building to the next without going outside, minus one. And what was really upsetting is there's an annual like anime sci-fi convention that happens in Lancaster every year, and it happened to be that weekend, and they expanded it because it was so big last year that the main hotel up the street from the library contacted another one, a smaller one down the street next to the library, and the whole hotel had to be evacuated, and people who were attending the convention, like it disrupted everybody. Like, it didn't just disrupt us. Downtown Lancaster for like blocks was shut down for hours. People had to be evacuated out of their homes. That hotel that evacuated is supposed to be a safe space where people can congregate if something like this were to ever happen in some type of emergency situation. It was a mess.
So how has the city supported you since then, or how had the community as a whole?
the community as a whole has been fabulous. The exposure's been incredible, but exhausting. I haven't heard too much from like city officials. I know the mayor of Lancaster, put out a very lovely statement. But these other people who started the hubbub with literal false information and just smear campaign, haven't taken any sort of responsibility or accountability for what happened after the fact. They refused to take the blame for it when they were the ones who stirred the pot on purpose with false information about what I was doing in a library.
A few weeks ago, we talked to James Lantz, and he was doing a podcast about the trans suicides in Lancaster. Do you have anything to say about that or any insight?
I know from organizing this stuff and having all the meetings that we've been having leading up to it, and even afterwards, I met a lot of people who were friends with these beautiful humans, and it hurts my heart that there is still this much hate in the world that bogs people down to the point where they just don't want to be here anymore. And that's one of the main reasons I'm doing this program, because it's so important to teach children to just be kind. It doesn't cost anything. Like, everyone's different. I when I first started doing the program, I love nature and flowers and things, and I had been taking like pictures of different flowers, and I was like scrolling through them one day, and this beautiful thought came to me, and I was like, I have to put a little collage together and write something. Like, and because we as humans are all different shapes, sizes, colors, but we all need the same things to survive. We all need love. We all need care. We all need water. We need, and so do flowers. Flowers may look alike, but no flower is exactly the same as another flower. And I mean, I'm kind of paraphrasing how I put it together. It was much more eloquent the way I wrote it, but we're all the same inside,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And if I can instill lessons of kindness and love and caring to a younger generation, maybe something will click and the world can slowly become a better place.
Well, I totally agree with you, Amie, and I agree with your saying. What you're doing is making a difference in a lot of young people's lives. So thank you so much for joining us, and keep up the fight.
Thank you, Amber.